How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Table Zero. I am joined by the light fiend monster you use to go up into your Fiendsmith engine. It's Garrett Phi Shear. How's it going?
I'm Moon of the Closed Sky.
You
Like,
don't
wait,
have to
what?
be. You don't have to be.
Okay.
You can be any
I
light
think of
fiend.
myself as a fable. I feel like I'm a white dustin in my
Listen,
mind.
you
all
can
right?
be a Despian Quiritus for all I care. I mean, they're all light fiends, right?
That is the most. No. Wait, isn't Quiritus a fairy? But
Are you trying to school me
Alright,
on
well-
Despians? Well, welcome to.
well, we can cut this one out.
It's all good. How's it going, friend?
It's been going all right. You know, I've been actually like on a little bit of since I got back from Indianapolis, like a Yu-Gi-Oh hiatus almost, and I'm kind of slowly like coming back into it, starting to play some locals again, starting to play some online Yu-Gi-Oh again, and so far it's been pretty nice. You know, I've got new glasses frames, I've got new headphones while we've been at it. So like, see. Not having to spend on Yu-Gi-Oh has been doing wonders for myself.
Yeah, but we got a big set coming. Infinite Forbidden is right around the corner. Tons of drama leading up to the release. Obviously, because it's the same weekend as the North American World Championship qualifier and a week before the European one. So we're going to talk all about that in today's episode, breaking down Infinite Forbidden, the effect it's going to have on the WCQ season. And I think just an update for me, if you're just listening to the show, if you just come to my channel to watch Phi, obviously that's understandable. Nationals, I had my nationals already, and I had COVID and couldn't participate in my nationals. So it happens sometimes. Yeah, that was super unfortunate not to be able to even try to go for the back-to-back. But we'll, you got to give room to some other players to win. So you can't always show up in nationals, right? That was kind of a bummer. I think my deck choice was definitely good for the format. I was planning on playing Branded. I was playing a lot with Nightfall, who actually top 8 the German national, so he was coaching me. It was a good season leading up to nationals, but unfortunately, you can't always plan. And we are fast approaching nationals in North America and the EU, sort of like the main public events that kind of wrap up the season before the big event, which is the World Championship this year. That's going to be in Seattle, Washington, in the US. And it's these are the big events, right? I think these are like the benchmark events for there's obviously a lot of YCS. We had a lot of opens this year, probably because Konami had something problematic with organizing YCSs in Europe. So they kind of pushed opens instead in Europe. Like almost every country had its own mini nationals, but definitely the biggest events, NAWCQ, EUWCQ, and just so it happens that NAWCQ is, of course, the premier weekend for a very, very impactful set in the metagame, Infinite Forbidden. And how are we approaching this national season?
Oh boy. I mean, I feel Infinite Forbidden is like another power of the elements when it comes to the power creep that is about to enter into Yu-Gi-Oh! This is, I can't really, I mean, I don't want to call it like power creep, but it does just kind of change how the game is going to be played. It is such a meta-defining set compared to something like a Phantom Nightmare, but it gave us Poplar, but nothing else. There are so many new viable strategies because the Fiendsmith engine just provides so many bodies and actually like so much just in general utility. So Infinite Forbidden dropping the same week of the NAWCQ is, I mean, let's not talk about the price. I'm fortunate that some people are like sponsored as well, so they get their cards. The pro players get their cards. Typically they could just borrow them and just give them a shout out during the deck profile. But for the rest of us who want to try and play this format, I think we are going from a $1,000 format right into another $1,000 format.
Yeah. I think that obviously Konami does this a lot, where you would launch a set on an event weekend. I also think that's kind of cool. I think the last time it kind of perfectly aligned with an event was probably YCS Bologna. It might have happened in other sets, but
Oh, they've done it tons of times.
yeah, it's usually the
For
plan.
3v for 3 versus 3 Las Vegas in 2023, that was the
Yeah.
same weekend that Kashira was first legal.
Yeah, so Bologna was the end of 2023. That was the same weekend as the Fire King structure deck. That was the first time it was actually like legal for play, a day after release. Same thing is happening with Infinite Forbidden. Obviously, this is it's an understandable marketing strategy. Obviously, you want people to be exposed to the set for the first time in a big event. It also obviously helps sell the set, right? If people want to, I mean, vendors are going to be buying cases anyway of like almost each set, every set, just because it's their job to sell the cards. But when it aligns so perfectly with an event, and then when that specific event is a world championship qualifier for an entire continent, and on top of that, it's a set like Infinite Forbidden, which, like you said, is Power of the Elements, Age of Overlord, like all those like big defining sets are like combined together, then it means that the cards are going to be really, really hard to get. Obviously, like the pro players who have sponsors, they will get the cards, but obviously those are like few and far between. We're talking to mostly like the average Joe here. I'm the average Joe. You're probably as well.
I'm the average Joe.
Yeah, I mean, we're not like sponsored whatsoever in terms of like just getting the cards for a tournament, but it's understandable that there's a lot of frustration, and I think it also aligns really well with like the lack of communication regarding a ban list, which also could change a lot of things.
I know.
So right now, this season, we're like players are going into this format in a sense where like I worked hard all year to try to get an invite for the most prestigious event of the year. And now I have to like, first of all, scramble for very expensive cards if I want to compete. I could just go in blind, not pick up the info stuff, and try to do well. I think it's always like branded 10
You
pie
can't
not
do
using.
that.
We'll see. We'll have to see. I'm sure it's not going to be 100% representation for Fiendsmith, just because there's other like, it's going to be rogue decks now at this point, right?
That is true.
Yeah, it's always going to be like the one lab, the one branded, the couple tan pies, voiceless maybe, those stuff that not necessarily play Fiendsmith. But yeah, it's that kind of sucks. I think we're both like kind of worn out from like, I would have been super excited for an EUWCQ of sorts if there was like clear communication of like there's going to be a ban list before this event. We know that there's going to be like a few options. And info like printing the Fiendsmith main card is like a secret rare, guarantees that it's going to be really hard to get. It's going to be really expensive. So it's all like very poor planned, in my opinion.
Then there's an octopus as well that you need to pick up. For those who don't know about Maxi at home, Molchummy Perulia, that card is exceptional, by the way. It's gonna be a sideboard only for the most part, for every single deck.
Unless you're playing 10.
That card, I mean, even in 10, it's not good against every single matchup, so sometimes even 10 Pi doesn't really want to play it. So it's mostly staying in the board for now, but it is an extremely strong card. It is just Maxi that could potentially draw you 3 cards. It's like Maxi, but your opponent is like going to disrespect it, so you are going to draw cards. It is very funny, just how this card works, because maximum it'll draw you 3 cards, so your opponent's like, why not? We'll just play into it, as well. So just the cards that are releasing, we have the Fiendsmith, we have this Molchummy Perulia card. I'm like, what else? That's not just it here for Infinite Forbidden, I should add.
That's true.
What else is cooking in this set?
So obviously, I think the main thing that we want to get out of the way, and I think everybody's like so like fed up with it, literally fed up because YouTube has been probably feeding you guys a lot of Fiendsmith content. If you're following me, if you're following Fi on Twitter, you've probably seen this already. So Fiendsmith is obviously the big thing. Molchami Perulia is a new standalone secret rare maxi equivalent that is definitely going to see some play. We have a couple new archetypes that are the premier archetypes besides Fiendsmith in the set, which are Millennium, which is sort of like an pseudo Exodia archetype, right? It has a lot of good capabilities in just like spamming bodies on the board. You can run a package with like the new Sengenjin. They all have like pretty similar effects where you can place them as continuous spells from your hand by paying life points. And then, by paying life points, you can just summon them from the spell and trap zone. So essentially, you can pay like 4,000, right? Get 2 bodies on the board. Those 2 bodies can translate into Moon of the Closed Heaven, which is the new Light Fiend Link 2. You can just start off your combo from there. It can translate to a lot of things. That's a pretty cool engine. We have the Whitewoods, which is the other premier archetype in this set, which is a continuation to the Diabellstar story, sort of like a prequel to the Diabellstar and Sinful Spoil stuff, which is very interesting. Seemingly, just now, today as we're recording, it just got a new card revealed in the next set, Rage of the Abyss. Not spectacular by any means. So the Whitewoods is a synchro archetype that utilizes sending spells to activate effect and summon, mostly combined right now with the toy engine from Battles of Legend, and of course, Centurion. This is another Calamity Lock deck. This is the TLDR of this deck. Yep. Calamity Lock, still legal in the TCG.
I don't know, man. They just gave Centurion like more ways to play through hand traps. This is so exciting, guys. Yippee.
Yeah. And I think besides that, I don't think there's a lot of things notable. There is also a new Link 2 called Top Hat Hair, Silhouette, Rabbit, whatever it's called. Yep. It's a very good card. It's a very, very good card. It's a Link 2 that requires 2 effect monsters, and on summon, it can add you a continuous trap that can summon itself as a monster from the deck. And then, if a trap is summoned as a monster, you can destroy 1 spell and trap card your opponent controls. So you usually search the Azurun trap card from Blazing Vortex, which is essentially a summon negate. It's sort of like a Saravis. So you can get that. It gets you a pop, gets you a summon negate. Very good in a Link 2, right? So right now you have like Bell boards going like a 1-2 card combo, ending on a full Bell spread, and this card, and the trap in the back row. It's just a ton of interruption. This set, like, you had your Snake Eye combos up until now.
Generics.
It's so much like generic stuff that you can just put into a deck that really increases the ceiling, the ability to play through hand traps, the available lines that you have, like a lot of versatility. And this is why the deck is just, the set is just so impactful, so powerful, and we will see a lot of these cards impacting the meta for sure. Like, this is going to be... It's unfortunate that it's like the end of the competitive year, because we're just going to see that for a couple tournaments, probably, like the big ones. And then it's probably going to be like, dying down a bit towards Worlds. But yeah, the set is crazy.
We haven't even mentioned that, like, the Tenpai Dragon... They're getting Tenpai Dragon Poplar out here.
Yeah, that's true.
The card itself... I mean, the Tenpai Dragon deck still does what it does, but I think it's still extremely, like, it just gives that deck an extra push, an extra layer of just playability. I think the Tenpai Dragon cards, without a field spell, are actually, like, pretty weak. They don't necessarily play through an insane amount because you just don't have a lot of engine. So you just kind of have your normal summon, a red dragon, and a quick play as, like, your 9 cards, but now you have this extra one. I forget the TCG name right now for the White Dragon, but basically it is a quick effect. Just summon out any Tenpai Dragon from the deck.
Yeah.
Whenever you feel like it. It also can allow you to go into Synchro 6s, which some people have been experimenting with playing the Whitewood Synchro in the Tenpai Dragon deck as well, because it lets you level modulate a little bit when you summon it from the hand.
Yeah.
So there are just some. So I mean, that card just gives the deck more flexibility in an OTK deck, a little bit more skill expression. Sure, that's cool, but when you give an OTK deck more options, I'm not sure how much more fun it is to play against that deck.
Yeah. It also comes with a new searcher, the Dora Draco baby dragon, which searches any fire dragon, and it's been a staple in Tenpai. So you can go like normal summon, search the yellow one, the new one. It's a poplar, so it's just special summon itself, tribute, get access to anything you need, like basically Hydra. It's gonna see play. I'm not sure like if it's gonna be.
Snake Eye Ash.
Yes, it is. Yes.
To be fair, not many people have been playing it just because it makes your board just play into more worse. You'd rather just have a non-engine. So most people would just rather have a non-engine slot than that card, but it is an option for Tenpai Dragon, which
it is definitely a Tenpai Dragon card.
Yes, it is definitely a Tenpai Dragon card. People are not sure whether they should be playing it or not, though.
Yeah. So the set obviously very impactful. I think that currently, like on a personal note, I posted this on Twitter. If you're not following me there, then you might have not seen it. But the current plan right now is to not attend the EUWCQ. Right now, we're recording this end of the first week of July. Just had July 4th. Happy 4th to Phi. And right now, the plan is... So I was thinking like... So Nationals wrapped up. A few of the friends, won the Nationals, topped the Nationals, got their invites, and we had like a group chat of like, okay, are we going to Europe this time? Are we like heading in to Berlin for the UWCQ? A lot of my friends are obviously going. I was honestly thinking like, first of all, I mean, I don't usually travel that much for events. Obviously, it's like a 3-hour flight for me, 4-hour flight probably, but. It's fine. I mean, it's an experience. I think that the reason why I decided to publicly say like the plan right now is to not go, because I think it's obviously people are gonna like scramble for the cards. They're gonna go no matter what because we're competitors. But the fact is that this recent year, we've seen a lot of pro players kind of like migrate to other TCGs because of really, really good price support with One Piece and Lorcana. We've seen that with like big names. We were supposed to have on this episode, we're gonna have Kristen Urena. He's right now probably in Germany still for the Lorcana tournament, and we're seeing a lot of migration, right? Because there is a lot of good things in other TCGs in terms of affordability, rarities, how the set are structured, the events, and of course the big one for the pro players who actually go to each event. You can see like people like Christian Urena, they will fly out to like almost any event. We've seen it with Pac in the past. We've seen it with Chris LeBlanc. Like they actually go, they fly out like 1 week they're in South America, the other week they're in Europe, then the States. And that costs a lot of money. And they do consistently well in these tournaments, and they're not getting, they're getting another Switch or another prize card that nobody wants to buy because there's so many of them. And so add that on top of like everything else that I mentioned, and the fact that going into this format, I was like, I want to play branded in like up until the season wraps up. I don't necessarily, maybe Ubel, I was considering it, but I don't want to play Snake Eye. I don't want to play like, the Fiends Meet stuff at this point. And I was like, so why am I going to this event even? Like, except for like the experience, Konami doesn't deserve people going to their events when this is how Yu-Gi-Oh looks like at the moment.
Right now, it is, it's the World Championship qualifier, so, you do have to compete. It is the culmination of a season. But I kind of want to bring up the point. I think actually a lot of even the players who are like leaving Yu-Gi-Oh, quote unquote, Yu-Gi-Oh has the best gameplay out of many card games. Despite us complaining and all of that, Yu-Gi-Oh, in terms of the creativity, the amount of nuance in every single game, and the amount of decisions, that's just the Yu-Gi-Oh in terms of gameplay. It has far more decisions than something like a Lorcana or a One Piece, at least from my experience playing those two games, is that there are just so many different activation points that actually change the course of a game and how you can read your opponent in that way. So that's why Yu-Gi-Oh! Like gameplay wise is actually like really good, extremely skill based, and it shows that these players also translate their abilities into other card games very, very well.
Yeah.
The thing is that this format is not going to be very good gameplay. That is the problem. It's with the Fiendsmith cards. It can't be a hand trap format anymore. You can't just hope I'm gonna open 3 viable hand traps against this guy and 2 starters. That's just not realistic. So the format's gonna have to change up a little bit. Going first is just going to be oppressive in this format as well. It's this constant arms race where we were kind of in this previous format where going second can actually work because 2 hand traps can typically end a turn. Now we're back to going first is by far just the best way to play. I wouldn't say not I'm saying that it isn't already the best way to play, but it is even stronger. It is even more difficult to go second now with more engines being put into the game. I mean, Galza, we didn't even talk about the fact that Konami decided to print a gimmick puppet FTK. So, and I'm not this deck is not like a joke or anything like that.
Yeah.
This is a tier 1 deck that is an FTK, and it's not like, oh, it's a pile deck. No, they literally printed an archetype with the goal of saying you can't interact with me, and I'm gonna FTK you. I'm sorry, this is just like, it's actually. It's like most of your games here going second is like draw, droll, or die. So best of luck, guys.
Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely agree in terms of like Yu-Gi-Oh! Is extremely like high level of skill when it comes to the gameplay. And I think the gameplay is not always the problem. Like it's always the surrounding things. Like at the end of the day, right? When you get to a format where like we're in right now, or the one we've been at before, where we saw like a YCS final being like hand trap, pass, hand trap, pass, hand trap, pass, which was kind of depressing, to be honest. And last time people complained so much about a tier 0 format, I think right now those people look back at tier limits and are feeling kind of stupid because that was actually gameplay. And right now we're seeing the non-gameplay now of a tier 0 format, and like extremely high power level cards. We can be recording this episode right now and a ban list will drop in like 30 minutes and kill this whole episode. We just don't know, right? We know we need one because we know things need to change. But on the other hand as well, it's also awkward timing to do this now because what are you realistically going to hit? How is Konami going to be selling their next huge hit of a set, right? This could cause it could cause a huge ripple in terms of like the audience, the player base, if you hit the wrong things or hit them too hard. And in addition to that, yeah, I mean, Gimmick Puppet is also an archetype in Infinite Forbidden, which is meant to FTK under a field spell that again keeps your monsters unaffected. Just like super unclear, like why would you it's like a 6 joke on the puppet lock. So a lot of things are just not 100% right now in this national season, and it kind of made me personally, we started talking about like why I'm feeling like I don't want to go to Euros, is the fact that it's not that I have like 6 YCS titles under my belt. Like I don't have any, right? I'm not there, so I'm not obligated to go. I do want to go, maybe because of people, maybe because of like friends and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's something that I really want to enjoy. And the fact that I'm traveling to play at a Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament, I want to enjoy the Yu-Gi-Oh! Right? I don't want to be playing like a subpar deck in a format where if you lose the die roll and maybe if you win it, you just lose instantly if your deck is not up to par.
What I will say is that so from like the pro player perspective here, Yu-Gi-Oh is more than also just the gameplay, however, and it is the friends that you do make. And I think, honestly, it's not even just from the pro player perspective; it's from all of our perspective, my perspective, even here. All my friends are going to at the NAWCQ here. Even the players who kind of like went off, they kind of went on a little One Piece adventure here, and they were like grinding that game specifically. Some started playing Lorcana, and now they kind of come back to Yu-Gi-Oh for the month and start to get ready for the NAWCQ. And it is just there to hang out with your friends, right? Isn't it so cool to be like in an Airbnb with like 8 different people, like just the boys, and just like basically just hang out all the time, go eat, go grab food, go play Yu-Gi-Oh on the side as well. And it's just it is a fun experience overall. So like, don't get me wrong, there is still this social aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh that keeps people playing. But the actual problem with me and playing Yu-Gi-Oh right now, which is actually the reason I was on a little bit of a hiatus, is that I didn't really have a social group playing Yu-Gi-Oh. Once YCS Indie finished up, kind of everyone went back to their other card games. My friends don't really attend locals. Like, locals game quality is not that good for me because I roll up with Snake Eyes, but no one else is playing Fire, so it's just not fun. So I just kind of stopped playing for these last 3 weeks because of the social aspect that wasn't so good. It wasn't even necessarily the gameplay portion. So maybe the social aspect will rope me back in a little bit. The thing is I have like options. I have like loved ones visiting in town the same weekend, so it's like I have between that or go play card games for a weekend in Austin, Texas. But I am kind of torn between that because the social aspect is a very big deal. And hey, like, shout out the bros from locals. Like, these are some of my best friends that I've had for the last 5 years. And well, the fact that a format makes me not want to go, and the price of cards makes me not want to go, and the flight, and then other things in life as well, is kind of disappointing.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, we're coming off of a tier 0 format into possibly another tier 0 format if nothing significant changes. And as of right now, like, nothing has changed in the meta, really. Like, the Snake Eye cards were not hit on. Like, there was a chance to start chipping away at the power of Snake Eye, but it did not happen whatsoever. And so we're going into this format, even with the ban list, it could be just a slap on the wrist as like an initial, like, starting to hit Snake Eye. And I think there's a lot of fatigue. There's much more fatigue, in my opinion, than last season. Last season, I remember, like, it was like mid, what was it, Super Heavy Samurai, and then it kind of transitioned before UWCQ, like, the cards got obliterated, and I don't actually remember what was the best deck in UWCQ.
It was Cash.
It was Cash, okay.
I think most people thought it was Kashira, but like, the deck was not even like close to tier 0 though. Like,
yeah, it wasn't.
It really wasn't.
Yeah,
it was an extremely beatable deck. It did have some like auto wins because obviously it's a shifter deck, so you don't just play a deck that loses.
But it was a deck that loses to Book of Moon. It was that simple sometimes.
Right. Book of Moon tactics, some hand traps sprinkled in the mix. All of that whole deck was extremely beatable. I'm like, I have people, like, some people reach out to me in my DMs. It's like, hey, what does this deck do later? How strong is it? And I'm like, this deck is awesome. This deck rocks. Like, someone reached out to me about Fiendsmith Unchained, like the actual Unchained deck with some, like, a Fiendsmith engine. Kind of, you get your Yama a little bit easier. Don't really need the U-Bell cards to play less in a draw, etc. And I'm like, this deck idea is awesome, but if you are going to a big event, why do you not have Snake Eye Ash in your deck? It's just the real problem. Like, you actually just have to ask that question, because the Fiendsmith engine itself is just too ridiculous. So, like, That's the thing. Is like when I was in for the NAWCQ last year, I actually had options. I did not have to play Kestir. I was thinking of showing up with Dragon Link. Actually, me and my friend group were like fiending Dragon Link for like a month prior, and eventually I just went back to Kashtira because it was just more comfortable for me. I got my first regional top with it. I was like, holy cow, I must be so good at the game. I wasn't. But like,
It's the Photon Hibernova
there's-
playmat on the wall.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's my first regional top right there. But it was like you had options. You had options going into this national season. You have Fiendsmith Snake Eye, and then you could play Yubel, but even I don't feel confident playing Yubel because it doesn't play well under Dimension Shifter, and then the third best deck in the format, Tenpai Dragon, it's probably going to run Dimension Shifter just because the Fiendsmith engine is just that oppressive.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned Droll and Lockbird before. We're going to talk a little bit about
mandatory.
Yeah, we're gonna talk a little bit about now like the tech options, the things that you will see in this format, and it is. I think it's first of all, Droll is back. It's always a card that comes in and out. It's so it sucks. People don't like it. People compare it to Shifter in terms of like a bad lingering floodgate, right?
Yeah, I will say, Droll and Lockbird is a very unskillful card. There is, when it comes to Ash Blossom, you have to choose when you want to Ash. When it comes to Effect Veiler, you have to choose when you want to Veiler. When you Imperm, you do the same thing. Droll and Lockbird, you activate it after your opponent searches a card. All right? There's no like, wow, when am I going to drop my Droll? No, I'm going to do it after your first search. So like, it removes a very skillful element from the game.
Yeah. So there's Droll and Lockbird, which is definitely coming back into the format. There's a lot of reasons why as well. Right now we have the two main reasons are obviously Fiendsmith and sort of like the final version of Yubel, which is going to be with Fiendsmith. So Fiendsmith and Yubel both are like engines that add a lot of cards to start their combos. So Droll is going to be very effective. We haven't seen Droll versus things like Snake Eyes because it's not going to be that oppressive, but now Snake Eyes are it's a hit or miss most of the time, depending on the hand. But you will now introduce a new drollable element into Snake Eye that people obviously are gonna just play around. If you have the Snake Eye stuff, you're gonna start that off first, then maybe do that the other way around. But at the end of the day, it's gonna be another thing that goes into the mix where like if the format wasn't bad enough, you cannot play your fun deck because you're just going to get Drolled, and most likely your fun deck is just going to lose to Droll. Mistaken Rest is the same thing for like going first, just other options to like add Droll and Lockbird into the mix. And of course there's Mulcharmy Perulia, which we talked about before, and Maxi, which is also Drollable. People need to like start translating the knowledge of Master Duel, where you continue drawing cards, but if your opponent also has Droll in addition to the Mulcharmy, they're not going to activate the Mulcharmy because they want to Droll you. It's like a weird battle there. So in terms of that, any other things like in terms of like hand traps that are going to circulate in the next format?
It's not going to be hand traps, really. It kind of has to be breakers, because what I've just told you about, like Fiendsmith, about those cards just power through Ash, Imperm, Veiler, like Mourner. Those cards hardly trade with one Fiendsmith. And so, just because the amount of bodies that these cards put on the field.
Yeah.
And so now you have to like think, okay, well, I need to also just play. Droll is the one card that is kind of just the ace up the sleeve that will kind of put them down lower. It's actually going to be a mixture of a format, or at least that is the thought process. Obviously, people can metagame around it, and no one theory is correct because you could try to break the meta because, of course, there's these other decks like Gimmick Puppet FTK, which kind of requires you to, if you don't draw Droll and Lockbird, you need to draw like You need to draw Vados, the Eruption Dragon of Extinction.
Let's
So
go.
good luck.
Let's go, Vados.
So shout out my boy Vados, but like there are, I mean that's a hand trap you could play,
Yeah.
but like it's the consensus is that there should be a mixture of breakers where you play the hand traps that are good, the hand traps that work consistently, and then you try to break the board otherwise because you're never going to stop them in the first place. Is at least the current theory, but that could change. People are still testing Infinite Forbidden in its current state.
Yeah, and the thing is, the NAWCQ is going to be a bit blind. People are going to go kind of blind into this because there's not going to be... So for the top echelon of players, there's going to be a lot of like testing and seeing what other players are playing and just like metagaming the shit out of this format, because this is what is required when it's not only a new format, it's a brand new set, and it's a huge event, right? So all of these combined means that you're going to have to metagame, and we talked about Droll, we talked about, breakers, but then we're talking about the other side of it, where if you switch towards playing breakers, you start losing to FTKs. If you don't play Droplet anymore, because for these boards, you're going to have to discard your entire hand, so maybe you're off Droplet or something like that, and then you have Branded, which is completely untouched, which again can also FTK you. So there's a lot of things that are just like super intricate when you're going to be building for this format. And I think the EUWCQ, so first of all, I was joking on Twitter that the ban list is going to drop the day of NAWCQ and going to be effective for EUWCQ, which is just going to be the most funny Konami thing possible, where both events have different ban lists. And hey, this has precedence, right? This is not out of the ass completely. This could happen. This could happen. Hopefully not, but that would be the funniest thing ever. And there's also obviously the case where you have the NAWCQ under one format and you have the EUWCQ under the same format, but there is still going to be a week of learning from seeing that event, which is going to be super, super interesting. We were talking about board breakers. I think I've listed a few down here because I think Konami, and this is going to be probably the wrap-up subject for today because we are definitely fatigued from even talking about a format like this. I think I think what I really like about something that I like about Konami employees, if you're watching this, something I like. Konami started to sprinkle in some interesting board breakers in each one of the sets. We had very, very interesting like quick plays recently that have some potential, and some of them even seeing play. I think the first one was Metaltronus, which we saw in the last YCS, I think we saw that actually being played in the last YCS. If you don't know Metaltronus, it basically summons a copy of a monster your opponent controls or that shares an attribute and a type with it. And if it's the same monster, you banish both face down. If it's just sharing the attributes and the type, you just negate it. So in a lot of cases, and it can also summon from the extra deck, of course. So in a lot of cases, when you are facing those, mirror matches, you have Snake Eye, you have Fiendsmith. The extra decks are very similar because a lot of the staples are the same. So the card is live a lot of the time, and you can get rid of things your opponent has on their board without a lot of effort. So that's a very cool card. I think now we have a new card coming in Infinite Forbidden called Vesper Girsu. It's sort of like a gimmick card. Do you remember what it does?
I do not. I know there's Dominus Purge as well.
There is also Dominus Purge.
About it well.
Yeah.
That is just like Imperm 2.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about. I remember reading this card when it released.
Yeah.
I remember reading it. It was cool, but I forgot what it did.
It's a funny card. Vesper Girsu, it's a quick play spell card. It's probably going to be one of those super rares that Konami just throws into the sets right now, which I love, by the way. I really, really like the innovation when it comes to like tech cards that are generic. Fine. Yeah, super, super cool. So this card is a quick play. You can only activate it when your opponent controls 2 or more monsters than you do. And then you give your opponent a choice. They can send as many monsters as they want from their field to the graveyard. On resolution, you check the amount of monsters they currently have and you apply the effects accordingly. So, If your opponent sends all of their monsters and gives up their entire board, you lose half your life points after you activate this card. If they choose to stay on one monster, they gain 2,000 attack. So far, this looks like a weird card. But if your opponent decides to stay on two monsters, their entire hand is banished until the end phase. And if your opponent decides to stay on 3 or more monsters, they cannot activate monster effects for the rest of the turn. So this is a very funny version of evenly matched, sort of, where your opponent is forced to make a decision. Do they give up resources from their board, or do they leave the resources on the board and actually take a penalty where they need to banish their hand that could have a hand trap or two in it, or of course, no monster effect for the rest of the turn, which is crazy. And I think when it comes to, I was checking this card out because I think when it comes to the boards I've been seeing with Snake Eye, Fiendsmith, and Yubel, the Fiendsmith engine actually made boards larger. When you had like the basic Snake Eye format, you would have like an Apo, and you would have like a Flamberge. That was the basic. Maybe sometimes you had Hope Harbinger, and the IP in the back row, which is fine, and Princess in the Graveyard. That's a fine board. So you still have two monsters there, which means your entire hands get banished after Vesper Gears resolves. So it's a very interesting and unique board breaker. What do you think about it?
I'm not sure how good it necessarily is versus a deck like Snake Eye, but the optimal way that the hope is that they only end at like most players are probably going to send until they have one or two remaining.
Yeah.
As well. So there's also like 3+, they are going to send something.
Yeah.
But obviously it's your opponent who has a choice. I think this kind of card is super interesting. The problem is like when you're facing down like an Appaloosa Flamberge, you need cards that actually like deal with the problem. And this card does not say like it's you don't actually control the card.
Yeah.
Which makes it a little bit weirder to try and break boards with.
Definitely.
So interesting card. I think it's better against Yubel, however. Those fields, the Yubel field, obviously they do have Varudras, the negate boy, but this Vesper Gears card against that deck, you are sending so many guys off the field for them. So
yeah, they usually ended on a pretty packed board.
Yeah, very, very highly. I very highly rate this card against decks like Yubel.
Yeah, so in terms of like a banlist shift, this could go either way, where this card actually becomes it's specific against like big boards, but I think this is Konami's way of sometimes they try to print an Nibiru, which works. Sometimes they try to print this, or way where there's a will, the field spell that could also punish very big boards. If you don't know what this card does, it's a field spell, which says that the turn player can excavate cards from the top of their decks based on how many cards their opponent controls. Super simple. They then add a card to their hand and put back a different card, right? This is the very basic premise of this card. But it has a kicker. If a player excavated 9 or more cards with this effect, during the end phase, their opponent's entire field and graveyard are shuffled back into the deck, which is hilarious. So again, another card that kind of tries to keep big boards in check. The power level of the engines is so high though that these board breakers are cool, but they're like you would just always want to get something as good as like a Droll and Lockbird to just seal the deal. A Dark Ruler no more, that is just like uninteractable and you can just take care of the whole problem and not gamble. But I think it is still kind of funny that against Yubel, if you manage to like deal with a Varudras, you can resolve this card for 9 and shuffle your opponent's entire life back into their deck. The last card that I want to talk about is Black Oat Laughs. And I think Black Oat Laughs is a card that we have definitely seen played. We've seen this card played. It has an effect on field where you can activate it and call a name of a monster and your opponent cannot special... Or activate the effect.
Summon the monster? No. So the on-field effect is that they cannot special summon the monster except from the graveyard. So they can't special summon the monster. They that you call. And then the graveyard effect says you can only activate one effect per turn, so you have to choose which one you want to use.
Yeah.
The graveyard effect reads that your opponent cannot activate the effect. You call another name, and your opponent cannot activate the effects of that monster on the field, in particular. So has some like play around for both effects, but still a powerful card.
Yeah, and now with every deck getting super accessible access to Beatrice, which is the card that should have been banned a long time ago, and I think we'll finally get the hammer during this format or after it. I mean, I think it's pretty much a guarantee unless they deal with Fiendsmith directly, which I don't think they will. You can just send this card, and a lot of traps right now just come built in with graveyard effects. It's just not enough to have a trap card that does something that is a trap. They always have to come with like added bonus. So it is now more than ever really impactful to send these trap cards from the deck to the graveyard and have, on top of everything, you can just have another Blackout Laughs in the graveyard just to deal with like something else completely for free because, if you keep the Beatrice, just do that on your opponent's turn as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not like completely sold on Beatrice to dump Blackout Laughs. It is still very interesting because the Blackout Laughs actually has a ton of different applications. You can still discard it for Witch and actually try to break boards with it as well. So it's a funny card. I'm not sure that making Beatrice in the combo is the way to go yet. We'll kind of have to figure out if people want to make the Fiendsmith Lacrimosa, or not Lacrimosa,
the Desiree.
Yeah, Desiree. That just means like angry god. I'm pretty sure, but like make the angry guy, who's just a hot red. You could try to make that instead of Beatrice to dump the Blackout Laughs. It depends if people want to play that or not. You know what? I have the weirdest take here, and that I think that Pure Snake Eye is still like very, very good, even without the Fiendsmith cards, because it just doesn't play into Droll of Lockbird anymore. So
that could definitely be a play. I mean, that's super deep metagaming, and I think people are definitely going to be on that. I'm dying to see NAWCQ. I'm dying to see what people play because, like, poor people.
It's interesting to metagame. It's interesting to theorize, but to actually play this format, my God.
I mean, you will see people metagame and succeed with their metagaming, and that is going to be very satisfying on stream to see. I think seeing the counter choices to very seemingly obvious, the community is sometimes tunnel visioned on certain things. So that's what I think sometimes Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like an iceberg, the iceberg picture, where on the surface you have a lot of hype. You have a lot of YouTubers making the same kind of content on the same cards that are just like hyping them up. And then there is the higher tier of competitive players, which actually dive into what it means for a lot of people to follow that hype and play those strategies the way they would be played and counter them. And we saw that tons of times in events where people just have a metagame pick where it goes really well up against the very popular and hype deck. I just remember, I think it was the Galaxy Cyclone in Tier Elements in Mystic Mind format. That's something that I can remember as like a good example of like, okay, so people play that. I'm already milling cards. I'm just going to mill a Galaxy Cyclone and their Mystic Mind. Those are the things that usually make up the better players and help win events. And we will see that probably the next time we'll do an episode is going to be maybe between NAWCQ, EUWCQ, or after both of them. Yeah. We will see you at the end of the month probably. Any closing thoughts, Fi?
Holy. Look, I was thinking about playing Madolche. I was on the grill for 4th of July. But I got drolled after I activated the duck and I hung up the deck. So I got drolled once and I'm like, yeah, we're good. We're good.
I will once again say just play Branded. It's always the solution.
I still have my Snake Eye cards, so I'm just gonna hold out for a hero here.
Yeah, for sure. All right, this has been an awesome episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, the link to Fi's channel is always in the description below. Make sure to check it out. So many hot videos. I just saw the Mystic Mind video hitting like 400,000 views. Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. This guy is a magician. So
Yu-Gi-Oh! Beef as well is up.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Beef?
I think
Yeah.
many people have. If you haven't seen it, do check it out. It's it's probably, I personally think it's my best video on my channel. Just for the amount of like history behind it as well, and just how it was edited. Also, shout out Vlad for helping me out on the editing for that.
Yeah.
So but do check that out.
If you for some reason are still watching this video and haven't seen Fi's videos, I highly recommend, and I'm not biased at all, probably the top Yu-Gi-Oh content on YouTube. So please do check it out. It's unlike anything you've ever seen. And that's enough glazing out of me. Good luck if you're going to NAWCQ or EUWCQ from the both of us. I hope you do well. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment down below your thoughts if you're already here. And we will see you in the next one. We will see you on the other side, that's for sure. Peace out.
Peace.